Thanks for your service, my sister texted, attached to a photo of her new restaurant sign, paid for with the Lakehouse my grandmother left me. I was sitting on a cot 6,000 miles from home when that message came through. My grandmother, her name was Margaret, but everyone called her Maggie May, had been dead 4 months. The lake house she left me in her will, the one on Lake Meredith where I learned to swim, where I cried the night before I shipped out, was gone. Sold. My parents forged my signature on the paperwork while I was deployed overseas. Every dollar of that $450,000 sale went straight into my sister's brand new restaurant. I stared at my phone in the dark. The blue glow lit up the ceiling of a temporary barracks I shared with 3 other officers. My sister's face smiled back at me from the photo. Behind her, a wooden sign read, Maggie May's Table. She named it after our grandmother. She used the money our grandmother left me, and she sent me a smiley face. I didn't respond to that message. Not that night. Not the next week. Not for 3 months. My family thought my silence meant I'd accepted it. They thought 6,000 miles of distance and the weight of a deployment had made me too tired to fight back. They thought I'd come home, sit down at the dinner table, and swallow it the way I'd swallowed everything else. They were wrong. When I finally flew home, I didn't drive to my parents' house. I didn't call. I walked into a courtroom with a folder full of evidence my father never saw coming, and what the judge said that afternoon made him collapse into his chair in front of everyone. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and your local time. I always love hearing from you. My name is Helena Wolf. I'm 28 years old. I'm a captain in the United States Army, and this is the story of how my own family robbed me while I was serving my country, and what happened when I came home. Now, let me take you back 18 months, to the night I got the call that my grandmother had passed. Growing up in the Wolf house, you learn the hierarchy fast. My father, Richard Wolf, sat at the head of every table, literal and figurative. He'd spent 26 years managing a branch of First Union Bank before retiring early. He kept the household budget on a spreadsheet. He approved purchases over $50. When he talked, you didn't interrupt. When he decided, you didn't question. My mother, Diane, held the second chair. She hadn't worked outside the home since 1994. Her job was keeping peace, which meant keeping us in line with whatever Dad wanted. Her favorite phrase, "Your father knows best." Then there was Vivian, my older sister, 3 years ahead of me. She'd bounced between 4 jobs by 25, but it didn't matter. Dad covered her rent. Mom defended her choices. Vivian was the golden child, pretty, agreeable, close to home. The daughter who stayed. I was the other one. I was the one who joined ROTC in college. The one who told my father at Thanksgiving dinner, junior year, that I'd accepted a commission in the Army. He set his fork down and looked at me like I'd slapped him. "You'll regret this," he said, in front of everyone. "The military doesn't care about you, Helena." My mother pressed her napkin to her mouth. Vivian studied her plate. Nobody said a word. Only one person drove me to the airport the day I shipped out to Officer Basic. My grandmother, Margaret Wolf. 74 years old, 5'2", hands steady on the wheel of her old Buick. She hugged me at the curb and said something I carried through every deployment, every long night, every moment I doubted myself. "This house will always be here for you, Helena, and so will I." I didn't know that was the last summer I'd see that house with my name still on it. I was 14 weeks into a logistics deployment in the Middle East when I found out she was gone. Not a phone call, an email. From my mother. "Your grandmother passed Tuesday. Funeral is Saturday. We understand you can't make it." 4 sentences. That was it. The woman who raised me every summer, who taught me to gut a fish and balance a checkbook, and stand up straight when men talked over me, reduced to 4 flat sentences in an email sent at 2:47 a.m., my time. I went to my commanding officer that same morning. Emergency leave was approved within hours. I called home to tell them I was catching a flight from Kuwait. My mother answered on the 3rd ring. Helena, honey, everything's already planned. The flowers are ordered. There's really no point in disrupting. I can be there by Friday night. Long pause. I heard my father's voice in the background, low, indistinct. Then my mother again. Your father thinks it's best you stay. You'd just be rushing in and out. Grandma would have wanted you focused on your duty. They didn't want me there. I sat on the edge of my cot for a long time after that call. Then, at 3 a.m. local time, I watched my grandmother's funeral on a live stream. The camera was propped on someone's lap. It shook. Vivian stood at the podium. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue and read from a piece of paper. Grandma loved all of us equally, she said. She would want us to stay together, to take care of each other. I turned off my phone. I lay in the dark and listened to the hum of the air unit bolted to the wall. 200 people had been at that service. I recognized most of them. Not one of them had called me. At the time, I told myself my family was just being thoughtless. I didn't realize yet that they needed me absent. I just didn't know why. 2 weeks after the funeral, I received an email from my grandmother's estate attorney, a man named Philip Darnell. Attached was a PDF, the last will and testament of Margaret E. Wolfe. I read it on my phone in the mess hall, surrounded by the clatter of trays and the smell of reheated coffee. The document was straightforward. Grandmother's savings and personal belongings, jewelry, some bonds, divided evenly between my father and me. But the Lakehouse on Lake Meredith, the property she'd owned for 31 years, assessed at roughly $450,000. That went to one person. Me. My throat tightened. I set the phone down, picked it up again, read it twice more. Then I stepped outside into the heat and called home. My father answered. Dad, I just got the will from Mr. Darnell. I can't believe Grandma left me the Lakehouse. Silence. Not the kind that means someone is thinking, the kind that means someone is deciding what to say. We need to talk about that, Helena. His voice was flat, controlled. That house has been in this family for 30 years. Your grandmother wasn't thinking clearly at the end. She seemed clear to me every time we talked. You weren't here. You don't know how she was. I gripped the phone tighter. It's what she wanted, Dad. We'll discuss it when you're home. And he hung up. I stood in the sun for a while. I tried to call Mr. Darnell, but he assured me the probate process was proceeding normally. Nothing to worry about. Everything being handled. I should have worried more. I should have pushed harder. But I was running logistics for a forward operating base, sleeping 4 hours a night, and I made the mistake that people who trust their families always make. I assumed they wouldn't actually do it. 3 months passed. The deployment settled into its hardest stretch. Long days, short nights, the kind of operational tempo that leaves no room for anything except the work in front of you. 14-hour shifts, supply chain disruptions, convoy schedules that changed every 48 hours. I emailed my father twice about the probate. No response. I called my mother on a Saturday. She picked up and spoke quickly, the way people do when they don't want to stay on the line. Everything's being handled, honey. Don't worry about it. Have you heard from Mr. Darnell? Your father's dealing with all of that. Can I talk to Dad? He's at the hardware store. I'll have him call you. He never called. I tried Vivian once. Straight to voicemail. At night, when the base went quiet, I'd lie on my cot and stare at the ceiling. Something was wrong. I could feel it the way you feel a shift in weather before the clouds come, pressure in the air, a weight you can't name. One night I dreamed I was standing on the dock at Lake Meredith. The water was still. My grandmother stood at the end of the pier, her back to me. She raised her hand, waving me forward. I walked toward her, but the dock kept stretching longer. I never reached her. I woke at 2 a.m., heart pounding. The next day, during a break between shipments, I called Mrs. Calloway, Maggie Calloway, my grandmother's neighbor and closest friend. She'd lived 2 doors down from the Lakehouse for 20 years. Funny you called, dear, she said. I saw a for sale sign near the lake last month. Couldn't tell which property from the road. I stopped breathing. Might be the Hendersons finally listing, she added, but I wasn't sure. I told her it was probably nothing. I thanked her. I hung up. But my stomach already knew what my mind refused to accept. It took me 40 minutes to find the county assessor's website. My hands were shaking so badly I mistyped the property address twice. I was sitting on the floor of the communications tent, laptop balanced on my knees, the overhead lights buzzing. It was past midnight. I'd waited until no one else was around. The page loaded. Property address: 1140 Lakeshore Drive, Lake Meredith. Owner of record, transferred. Sale date, March 14th. Seller, Helena Wolf, via power of attorney, represented by Richard H. Wolf. Sale price, $450,000. I read it 3 times. Helena Wolf. My name. My signature. On a document I'd never seen, for a sale I'd never authorized. On a date when I was standing in a warehouse outside Kuwait City counting pallets of engine parts. I sat on that floor for a long time. The screen blurred. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and read it again. Then I called my father. He answered on the second ring. Casual. Helena, good to hear from you. Did you sell the Lakehouse? 5 seconds of silence. I counted. It was the right thing to do, Helena. His voice didn't waver, not even a little. Your sister needed the capital. The restaurant is an investment for the whole family. You'll understand when you get home. You forged my name. I made a decision for this family. That's what fathers do. I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the laptop. I sat there on the floor of that tent with the buzzing lights above me, and something inside me changed shape. It didn't break. It hardened. That was the moment I stopped being his daughter. Not legally. Not yet. But in every way that mattered. The woman who would have begged, who would have argued, who would have called crying. She was gone. What replaced her was a plaintiff. 2 days later, my phone vibrated during a briefing. I glanced at the screen under the table. Vivian. A photo. A storefront with a wooden sign. Hand-painted script. Gold on dark green. Maggie May's table. Below the sign, Vivian stood in a chef's apron, arms wide, grinning. Behind her, through the glass door, I could see pendant lights and white tablecloths. Under the photo, 1 line. Thanks for your service. Grandma would have loved this. I stared at that message for a very long time. She named the restaurant after our grandmother. The grandmother whose Lakehouse funded every square foot of it. The grandmother whose will, the legal, witnessed, notarized document that said this house belongs to Helena, meant nothing to any of them. And my sister sent me a smiley face. I left the briefing early, walked back to my quarters, sat on the edge of my cot, opened my laptop. I typed an email to Major Daniel Crow. He was a JAG officer stationed at the same base, Judge Advocate General's Corps, military lawyer. I'd met him during a pre-deployment brief 6 months earlier. He'd given a lecture on service member protections. I remembered thinking at the time that I'd never need anything like that. Subject line: I need legal advice. It's personal. I attached 3 things: the county assessor record, a screenshot of Vivian's text, and the PDF of my grandmother's will. Then I closed my laptop and sat in the silence. I didn't text Vivian back. Not that night. Not the next day. Not for 3 months. My family interpreted my silence as defeat. They believed I'd swallowed it. They believed the distance and the deployment and the exhaustion had done what they always expected it to do: make me disappear. But I wasn't silent. I was building a case. Major Crow didn't do emotion. He did procedure. We met in his office the next evening. A plywood-walled room with a folding table, 2 chairs, and a stack of binders taller than the desk lamp. He'd already reviewed my email. Were you stateside on the date of the sale? No. Did you sign a power of attorney? No. Did you authorize anyone, verbally, in writing, by any means, to act on your behalf regarding that property? No. He wrote something on a yellow legal pad. Didn't look up. Then what we're looking at is forgery, and depending on jurisdiction, possibly wire fraud if funds were transferred electronically. He paused. And there's something else working in your favor. He set down his pen. You were on active duty under federal orders. The Service Members Civil Relief Act gives courts broad discretion when a service member's rights are compromised during deployment. It won't be the basis of your civil claim. The forgery does that on its own. But it tells the court exactly who your father chose to victimize, someone who couldn't fight back because she was serving her country. Judges notice that. The room felt very still. Can I handle this quietly? I asked. Within the family? Crow looked at me. He had the kind of face that didn't move much. Level eyes, flat expression. Like a poker player who'd long ago stopped pretending he was playing a game. Helena. First time he'd used my first name. They forged your signature on a legal document and sold your property. This isn't a family disagreement. This is a crime. First step is a police report, Crow said. You'll file that stateside. It creates a formal record. From there, you want a civilian attorney for the civil side, and the DA can decide on the criminal side. The two tracks run parallel. I sat with that for a moment. The air conditioner rattled in the wall. What do I need to do? Document everything. Every text, every email, every phone record. Don't contact your family again. Anything you say can complicate things. And when you're stateside, we'll connect you with a civilian attorney who specializes in real estate fraud. I nodded. That night, I started a folder on my laptop. I labeled it Meredith. Over the next 3 months, it grew thick. The silence drove them crazy. 3 weeks in, my mother started calling. I let every call ring through. The voicemails stacked up like geological layers, each one revealing more pressure, more desperation, more guilt. Week 1. Helena, honey, why aren't you picking up? I'm getting worried. Week 2. Your father is hurt that you're ignoring us. We're your parents. Week 3. Is this about the house? We did what was best for the family. You're being selfish. She texted too. Long threads that ping-ponged between worry and accusation. I can't sleep. Are you safe? Followed 12 hours later by, I didn't raise you to be this petty. Vivian added her own pressure. A photo of the restaurant interior, freshly decorated, candles lit on every table. Wish you could see this in person. Mom's been crying because of you. Because of me. My father sent exactly one message. It arrived at 6:14 a.m. My time, which meant he'd typed it late at night, possibly after a drink. No greeting, no sign-off. When you're ready to act like an adult, call me. I read every word they sent. I screenshot every message. I saved every voicemail. I forwarded everything to a dedicated email address that Major Crow helped me set up. Each item was logged with a date, time, and sender. At night, while the base slept, I sat on my cot with my laptop and built a timeline. The date my grandmother died. The date of the funeral. The date the power of attorney was notarized. The date the house was sold. The date the funds were transferred. The date of Vivian's text. Each date I cross-referenced with my deployment orders, which placed me firmly on the other side of the world. Every message they sent, every voicemail dripping with guilt and accusation, they were building my case for me, and they had no idea. Major Crow connected me with a civilian attorney named Rebecca Holt. She practiced out of Raleigh, specialized in real estate fraud, and had a reputation for being thorough in the way a surgeon is thorough, precise, unhurried, and unsentimental. Our first video call happened at 11 at night my time. Rebecca's office was bright behind her. She'd already pulled the public records. Walk me through the family dynamic, she said. No small talk. I gave her the short version. She listened without interrupting, then turned her screen to show me a document. This is the power of attorney your father filed with the county. It authorizes Richard H. Wolfe to sell the property at 1140 Lakeshore Drive on behalf of Helena Wolfe. She zoomed in on the bottom of the page. That's supposed to be your signature? I looked at it. The handwriting was close. My father had practiced, but the slant was wrong. The tail on the A in Helena curled the wrong direction. It's not mine. I know. She scrolled down. The notary who certified this is a man named Greg Parson. Licensed notary in your father's county. And this is the part that matters. He and your father worked together at First Union Bank for 9 years. The air left my chest. Standard procedure, Rebecca continued, requires the signer to appear in person before the notary, or, at minimum, verified identity through a remote process. Neither happened here. Your father walked in with a forged document, and his old colleague stamped it. What's the penalty for that? Forgery of a deed or similar instrument is a Class H felony in North Carolina. That carries 4 to 25 months in prison. And a permanent criminal record. She paused. For your father? The notary could face his own charges, and he'll almost certainly lose his commission. I said nothing for a long time. That's my father. Rebecca's voice softened, just slightly. I know, but he made that choice when he signed your name. She told me one more thing before we hung up. Helena, the restaurant your sister opened? If it was funded with proceeds from a fraudulent sale, every dollar is traceable. Every single one. Rebecca moved quickly. Within a week, she had the forged power of attorney sent to a forensic document examiner, a woman named Dr. Linda Pace, board certified, with 20 years of courtroom experience. I provided comparison samples. My real signature from military records, tax filings, my officer commission paperwork. All on file, all verifiable, none anywhere my father could have accessed. While Dr. Pace did her work, I made another call. Maggie Calloway picked up on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. I need to ask you something, I said, about my grandmother's state of mind when she made her will. Sharp as a tack, Maggie said immediately. Your grandmother balanced her own checkbook until 3 weeks before she passed. She drove herself to the attorney's office to sign that will. I know because I went with her. My chest tightened. You were there? Sat in the waiting room. She came out and said, "It's done. Helena gets the house." And then she told me something I never forgot. I held my breath. She said, "Richard will try to take it. That's why I'm putting it only in Helena's name, not the family." Helena. I pressed my hand over my mouth. My grandmother knew. She saw it coming. She knew her own son well enough to predict exactly what he would do, and she'd tried to protect me the only way she could. If you ever need me to say that in front of a judge, Maggie added, her voice steady, I will. I promised your grandmother I'd look out for you. And I don't break promises, sweetheart. I thanked her. I tried to keep my voice even. I mostly succeeded. After we hung up, I sat alone in my quarters for a long time. My grandmother had known. She'd known. And she'd built what walls she could around me. It wasn't enough to stop my father, but it was enough to prove, if it ever came to that she'd intended every word of that will. Meanwhile, my sister was building a monument to her own guilt and posting it online for everyone to see. Vivian launched an Instagram page for the restaurant. Professional photos, warm lighting, carefully styled plates. She wrote long captions about family and legacy. One post got over 200 likes. The caption read, "This restaurant is my grandmother's legacy. Our whole family came together to make this happen. Grandma always said food brings people together. This is for you, Grandma." Our whole family. I read that line sitting on my cot at 1 a.m., and something cold moved through me. I wasn't part of our whole family. I was deployed. I wasn't consulted. I wasn't asked. My name was forged on a legal document so my sister could hang Edison bulbs and buy a commercial oven. But Vivian didn't see it that way. To her, this was a feel-good story. Granddaughter honors grandmother's memory through food. Beautiful, shareable, likable. The comments poured in. So beautiful. Your grandma would be so proud. My mother had commented too. So proud of you, sweetheart. Nobody asked where the money came from. I screenshot the post, the caption, the comments, the date stamp, the engagement metrics. I sent it to Rebecca. Her reply came within the hour. This is public evidence that she's spending the fraudulent proceeds and constructing a false narrative. She's using the word family to imply collective consent. Keep documenting everything she posts. So I did. Every photo, every caption, every comment. I saved them all in the folder labeled Meredith. My sister was telling the world a beautiful story about our grandmother. She just didn't realize that every word of it was building a case she couldn't take back. The money wasn't the worst part. I found out the worst part on a Tuesday, during a routine email exchange with Maggie Calloway. She'd been sending me small memories, stories about my grandmother, recipes she'd found in Grandma's kitchen, photos from holidays I'd missed. They were a kindness I didn't know I needed. Then, buried in a long email about Grandma's garden, Maggie wrote something that knocked the air out of me. She tried to call you, for the last 2 years. Over and over. She'd phone your parents' house and ask them to pass along the message. She didn't have your military number. She told me once. Helena never calls back. I think she's forgotten about me. It broke my heart. I read it twice. Then I read it again. My grandmother never had my direct number. She was 77, not comfortable with email, and she'd always called through my parents' landline. That was how we'd done it my whole life. She'd call the house, and they'd patch me through or pass along a message. But I hadn't received a single message from her in 2 years. Not one. I couldn't prove then that my father had deliberately intercepted her calls. But the timeline was damning. She called. He answered. The messages never reached me, and when I asked about her, he told me she was slipping. Maybe there's an innocent explanation for that. I've looked for one. I haven't found it. But he had. He'd answered her calls and told her I was too busy. He'd hung up and told me she was slipping. He'd cut the line between us, cleanly, deliberately, and let my grandmother spend the last 2 years of her life believing her granddaughter had forgotten her. She died thinking I didn't care. I cried that night. Not for the house, not for the money, for the phone calls that never reached me, for the old woman sitting by her kitchen window, wondering why I'd stopped calling. He didn't just steal my property, he stole the last 2 years I could have had with my grandmother. And that is something no court on earth can give back. My deployment ended in August. I flew from Kuwait to Ramstein, then Ramstein to Fort Liberty. 22 hours of travel, 3 connections, and a headache that sat behind my eyes like a clenched fist. Somewhere over the Atlantic, I turned my personal phone back on. 11 missed calls, 6 voicemails, 23 texts, my mother's name, over and over. I opened the most recent text, sent 4 hours earlier. We're all coming to pick you up. Vivian's closing the restaurant for the day. Dad's cooking your favorite, pot roast and potatoes. It's time to put this behind us, honey. We love you. I could see it so clearly, the 3 of them waiting at arrivals. My mother with a handmade sign, Vivian with a bakery box, my father standing slightly apart, arms crossed, jaw set, ready to accept my surrender with a firm nod and a one-armed hug. They wanted to wrap me in a homecoming before I could think straight. Smother the anger with sentimentality. Put me at the dinner table, pass the potatoes, and say, "We're family," enough times until it felt true. I'd seen this play before. Every holiday, every argument, every time one of us stepped out of line, the Wolf family reset button. Sit down, eat, pretend it didn't happen. Not this time. I called my mother, kept my voice level. Don't come to the airport. I need a few days to settle in. Helena, please. Your father is trying. I'll call when I'm ready. I hung up. Then I dialed Rebecca Holt. I land Thursday. When can we file? Rebecca paused. The complaint is drafted and ready. But Helena, there's something you should know first. Her voice shifted. The notary, Greg Parson. He's agreed to cooperate. I closed my eyes. The plane hummed around me. What does that mean? It means he's scared. And scared people talk. That night, alone in my hotel room near the airport, I almost called my mother. My thumb hovered over her name for a long time. Some part of me, the part that still remembered birthday cakes and braided hair and being carried to bed, wanted to hear her say she was sorry. Wanted to hear her say it was a mistake. that they'd fix it. That I could come home and it would be like before. I put the phone down. Because before was a lie too. I just hadn't seen it yet. I landed Thursday afternoon. By 5 o'clock, I was standing in my apartment near Fort Liberty, a one-bedroom I'd rented before deployment, barely lived in, still smelling like cardboard and cleaning product. I dropped my duffel by the door, locked the deadbolt, and stood in the silence for a moment. Then I heard voices. I turned the corner into the living room and stopped. My father sat on my couch, legs crossed, one arm stretched along the back. My mother stood in the kitchen, unpacking grocery bags. Vivian leaned against the counter, scrolling her phone. They all looked up at the same time. "Welcome home, soldier." My father smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Vivian held up a white box. "I brought something from the restaurant. You have to try it." My mother rushed toward me, arms open, tears already falling. "We missed you so much, honey." I didn't move. I looked past them to the kitchen counter, where my spare key sat next to a bag of lemons. "How did you get in?" "I used the emergency key," my mother said, still reaching for me. "You gave it to me before you deployed, remember? In case something happened." I remembered. In case of emergency. In case the pipes burst. In case I died overseas and someone needed to collect my things. Not for this. "I asked you not to come." The room shifted. Vivian lowered the box. My mother dropped her arms. My father uncrossed his legs. "You're our daughter. We don't need an invitation." "You used a key I gave Mom for emergencies." I kept my voice flat. "This isn't an emergency. This is a boundary. Please leave." Nobody moved. The refrigerator hummed. Vivian tried to laugh. "Helena, come on. It's just dinner." "Please leave," I said again, and opened the front door. My father didn't move. He looked at the open door, then back at me, and sat down again. "You want to throw your family away over a house? This isn't about a house, Dad. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you. Don't speak for her. I am her son. And I am the person she chose to leave it to." His jaw tightened. My mother stepped between us, hands raised, the peacekeeper deploying her standard protocol. "Helena, please, you don't know what it's been like for us. Your father has been under so much stress. Vivian invested everything she had. If you take this further, you'll destroy your sister's business, your father's reputation, this whole family. You destroyed my trust when you forged my name." The word hung in the room. Forged. My mother flinched. Vivian set the bakery box on the counter. When she spoke, her voice was harder than I expected. "Oh, come on, Helena. You were gone. You're always gone. You didn't even come to Grandma's funeral." She spread her hands. "What were we supposed to do? Let a $450,000 house just sit there?" I looked at my sister, looked at her carefully. "I wasn't at the funeral because Dad told me not to come." Vivian blinked. My mother looked at the floor. My father stood up. He walked toward the door slowly, like he was doing me a favor by leaving. At the threshold, he stopped. Close enough that I could smell his aftershave. "If you do what I think you're about to do," he said quietly, "you won't have a family to come back to." I met his eyes. "I haven't had one in a long time." He walked out. My mother followed, crying. Vivian picked up her box and left without looking at me. I closed the door. Locked it. Called a locksmith. Then I called Rebecca. "File everything." Rebecca filed on Monday. The complaint named Richard H. Wolfe and Vivian R. Wolfe as defendants. The charges: real estate fraud, forgery, conversion of property, and breach of fiduciary duty. Attached to the filing was a formal request that the court refer the evidence of criminal forgery to the district attorney's office for prosecution. 2 days later, a process server rang the doorbell at 47 Birchwood Lane, the house where I grew up. I wasn't there for it, but I know exactly how it went because 3 relatives called me within the hour. My father opened the door. He read the front page of the summons. According to my Aunt Janet, who was visiting for coffee that morning, the color drained from his face so fast she thought he was having a heart attack. My mother came running. She read it over his shoulder and had to sit down on the porch steps. Vivian received her own summons the same afternoon. She was named as a co-defendant, a knowing beneficiary of fraudulently obtained funds. My father called me 7 times that evening. I watched each call light up my screen and let it ring. Vivian called once. Her voice on the voicemail was shaking. "Are you serious? You're suing me? Your own sister? Over a house?" Over a house. That was still how she framed it. Over a house. By the end of the week, the family narrative machine was running at full speed. My father called every relative he could reach. "Helena is suing her own parents. Can you believe it? After everything we've done for her." My mother posted a vague status on Facebook. "When your own child turns on you, all you can do is pray." Some relatives called me. Most were confused. A few were angry. I gave each one the same answer. "You're welcome to attend the hearing. The truth will be there." That same week, Rebecca filed a separate criminal complaint with the district attorney's office. Forgery, fraud, the civil case, and the criminal track would run in parallel. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in October. Courtroom 3B, County Courthouse, a small brick building with a flagpole out front and a parking lot that smelled like hot asphalt. I arrived 20 minutes early. I wore my Class A dress uniform. Olive jacket, brass buttons, captain's bars on the shoulders, unit crest on the left pocket. Rebecca had been the one to suggest it. "You're an active duty officer whose rights under federal law were violated. The uniform tells the court exactly who was harmed." Rebecca met me in the hallway. She carried a leather binder 3 inches thick. Behind her, Major Crow sat on a bench. He'd requested leave to attend as a character witness. He nodded once when he saw me. Said nothing. Didn't need to. In the 3rd row, near the window, Maggie Calloway sat with her hands folded in her lap. Her white hair was pinned back. She wore a blue cardigan my grandmother had given her. Beside her, on the bench, she'd placed a small photo album. At 9:47 a.m., the door opened again. My father walked in first. Dark suit, red tie, back straight. But his eyes were bloodshot, and his jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. My mother followed. Black dress, tissue in hand. She scanned the room and found me immediately. Our eyes met. Hers were swollen. Vivian came last. Black dress, dark circles under her eyes. She didn't look at me. Their attorney, a man named Gerald Pratt, competent enough for small-town real estate closings, but clearly out of his depth in a fraud case with forensic evidence and federal overtones, directed them to the far table. I later learned my father had called 3 other firms first. 2 declined after reviewing the case. The 3rd quoted a retainer he couldn't afford. My father looked at me across the aisle, looked at the uniform. Something moved in his expression. Surprise? Maybe? Or recognition. The daughter he'd dismissed had come back dressed in exactly the thing he'd told her she'd regret. I held his gaze for 2 seconds. Then I turned to face the bench. The judge entered. We all rose. Judge Patricia Whitmore was in her late 50s, with reading glasses on a chain and a voice that carried without effort. She reviewed the filings, then turned to Rebecca. "Counsel for the plaintiff, proceed." Rebecca stood. She didn't rush. "Your Honor, the plaintiff, Captain Helena Wolfe, is the sole named beneficiary of real property located at 1140 Lakeshore Drive, Lake Meredith, per the last will and testament of Margaret E. Wolfe, deceased." She opened her binder. "We will demonstrate that the defendant Richard Wolfe fabricated a power of attorney bearing the plaintiff's forged signature, had it fraudulently notarized, and used it to sell the property for $450,000, while the plaintiff was deployed overseas on active military orders." She laid out the evidence with the precision of a surgeon arranging instruments. Exhibit A, the forensic handwriting analysis from Dr. Linda Pace, concluding with 99.7% certainty that the signature on the power of attorney was not Helena Wolfe's. Exhibit B, my military deployment orders, not cited under SCRA, but as direct evidence that I was physically incapable of signing any document in the state of North Carolina on March 14th. Exhibit C, The property transfer records showing the $450,000 deposited directly into an account registered to Vivian R. Wolf. Exhibit D, text messages from both defendants, demonstrating knowledge and intent. Rebecca highlighted Vivian's text to me, the photo of the restaurant sign with, "Thanks for your service." She showed the Instagram posts where Vivian wrote, "Our whole family came together." Then she pulled up bank records showing the $450,000 deposited directly into Vivian's personal account. Not a family account, not a trust. Vivian's name, Vivian's account. Ms. Wolf didn't just benefit from the fraud, Rebecca told the court. She received the proceeds, she knew the source, and she publicly celebrated it. The defense attorney adjusted his glasses, stood slowly. "Your Honor, my client believed he was acting in the best interest of the family estate. There was a verbal understanding." "Was there written authorization from the property owner?" Judge Whitmore asked. "No, Your Honor." "Then there was no authorization. Continue." The defense attorney called my father to the stand. Richard straightened his tie and walked to the witness box. "My mother wasn't thinking clearly when she wrote that will," he said. "The house was always meant to stay in the family." Judge Whitmore looked at him over her glasses. "Mr. Wolf, was your mother declared mentally incompetent by any medical professional?" "No." "Did you contest the will during the probate process?" "No." "Then the will stands as written." My father sat down. His shoulders dropped 2 inches. Judge Whitmore reviewed her notes. "Plaintiff's counsel, do you have additional witnesses?" "One more, Your Honor. Mrs. Margaret Calloway." Maggie stood slowly. She smoothed her cardigan, my grandmother's cardigan, and walked to the witness stand with the careful steps of a woman who knew exactly where she was going and why. Rebecca asked the first question. "Mrs. Calloway, how long did you know the decedent, Margaret Wolf?" 42 years. She was my neighbor and my dearest friend." "In your observation, was Mrs. Wolf mentally competent when she drafted her will?" Maggie's chin lifted. "Margaret Wolf was the sharpest woman I ever knew. She balanced her own checkbook until 3 weeks before she died. I drove with her to the attorney's office the day she signed that will. She walked in alone. She walked out and told me, 'It's done. Helena gets the house.'" Rebecca paused. "Did she say anything else?" Maggie looked directly at my father. Her voice didn't waver. "She said, 'Richard will try to take it. That's why I'm putting it in Helena's name.' Not the family. Helena." The courtroom went still. I saw my Aunt Janet press her hand to her mouth. My father stared straight ahead, unblinking. "There's one more thing," Maggie continued. She hadn't been asked, but no one stopped her. "Margaret tried to call Helena for 2 years before she passed. She'd phone Richard's house and beg him to pass along a message. He never did." Her voice cracked. "She told me once, 'I think Helena has forgotten about me.' She died believing that. And it wasn't true." Something small and terrible happened in the room. The air changed. The relatives who'd come to support my father shifted in their seats. One of them, a cousin I hadn't seen in years, looked at Richard like she was seeing him for the first time. My mother covered her face. Vivian stared at the table. My father didn't move at all. "Mrs. Wolf was not confused," Maggie said softly. "She was afraid. Not of dying, of what her son would do after she was gone." Judge Whitmore nodded once. "Thank you, Mrs. Calloway." Judge Whitmore took 15 minutes to review her notes. No one in the courtroom spoke. My mother's quiet crying was the only sound, rhythmic and thin, like a clock running down. The judge removed her glasses, set them on the bench, looked at my father. "The court finds clear and convincing evidence that Richard H. Wolf fabricated a power of attorney bearing the forged signature of Helena Wolf, had it fraudulently notarized by a licensed notary with whom he had a prior professional relationship, and used that document to sell real property belonging to the plaintiff, while the plaintiff was deployed overseas in active military service." She paused. "Let the words settle. This court is deeply troubled that the defendant chose to exploit a window of time when the plaintiff, an active duty service member deployed overseas, was physically unable to monitor or protect her own property. While the core of this case is forgery and fraud under state law, the court notes that targeting someone who is serving this country adds a particularly troubling dimension to the defendant's conduct. She turned to the documents in front of her. The court orders the following. First, the court finds the power of attorney fraudulent and the resulting property sale to be the product of forgery. Given that the property has since been conveyed to a bona fide purchaser with no knowledge of the fraud, the court will not unwind that transaction. Instead, the defendants shall bear full financial responsibility. As the property has been transferred to a bona fide purchaser who acted in good faith, the defendants shall pay full restitution of $450,000 to the plaintiff. Second, additional damages in the amount of $85,000, covering loss of property use, legal costs, and compensatory damages. Third, the court has been made aware that the plaintiff has separately filed a criminal complaint with the district attorney's office. Given the evidence presented today, this court will forward its findings to the DA to assist in that investigation. Forgery of a legal instrument is a Class H felony under North Carolina General Statute 14-122. She looked at my father one final time. Mr. Wolf, the law does not bend for good intentions, and what you did shows no good intentions at all. Richard sat very still. His attorney leaned over to whisper something. Richard didn't respond. His hands, which had been folded on the table, slowly opened. His head dropped forward. Then his whole body sagged. Shoulders, spine, everything. And he slumped into his chair like someone had cut the strings holding him up. Diane cried out, "Richard!" Vivian jumped to her feet. The bailiff stepped forward. But my father wasn't having a medical emergency. He was having something worse. He was a man who'd controlled everything his entire life. His bank, his wife, his daughters, his mother's legacy. And in one afternoon, in front of his family and a room full of witnesses, he'd lost it all. The courtroom emptied slowly. My father was helped to his feet by his attorney and the bailiff. He walked out without looking at anyone, one hand on the wall for balance. He moved like a man 20 years older than he'd been that morning. I was gathering my things when my mother appeared in the hallway. She'd stopped crying. Her face was tight, blotched, furious. "Are you happy now?" She blocked my path. "You've destroyed your father." I looked at her. The woman who'd taken my emergency key and used it to ambush me. The woman who'd watched her husband forge my name and said nothing. The woman who'd posted on Facebook about her ungrateful child while I was building a legal case 6,000 miles away. "He destroyed himself, Mom. I just brought evidence." She opened her mouth, then closed it. She stepped aside. Down the hallway, Vivian stood alone. Her attorney had already left. She was gripping the strap of her purse with both hands, knuckles white. "The restaurant," she whispered. "My restaurant." Rebecca stepped forward, professional and even. "Ms. Wolf, I'd suggest you speak with your attorney about restitution options." I walked past them both. Through the double doors, into the October sun. Maggie was waiting by the stone bench outside. She stood up when she saw me and opened her arms. I stepped into them and pressed my face into that blue cardigan, my grandmother's cardigan, and cried. Not from victory. There was no victory here. Just a woman getting back what should never have been taken, at a cost no one should have to pay. "She'd be so proud of you," Maggie said into my hair. Across the parking lot, Major Crow leaned against his car, arms folded. He caught my eye and gave a single nod. Nothing more was needed. I drove home alone. I didn't turn on the radio. I pulled my grandmother's photo from my wallet, the one from the lake, the two of us on the dock, me at 10 years old, and propped it on the dashboard. I sat there a long time. The weeks after the hearing moved in a straight line. The district attorney's office opened a formal investigation into the forgery. My father hired a criminal defense attorney, a different one from the civil case. The retainer alone, I was told, cost more than his car was worth. Greg Parson, the notary, folded almost immediately. His cooperation statement was plain. Richard Wolf came to my office and told me this was a family arrangement. He said his daughter had given verbal consent. When asked if he'd verified my identity, confirmed my presence, or followed any of the legally required procedures for notarizing a power of attorney, Parson admitted he hadn't. He'd stamped it on the strength of a 20-year acquaintance and the assumption that a former bank manager wouldn't lie. His notary license was suspended pending a full review by the Secretary of State's office. The new owners of the Lakehouse, a couple named the Brennans, retirees from Charlotte, were contacted by Rebecca's office. They'd purchased in good faith, through a licensed agent, with no knowledge of the fraud. The court protected their ownership. My restitution would come from my father and my sister, not from the people who'd innocently bought the home. As for the money, the $535,000 in total, restitution plus damages, the court gave my father and Vivian 90 days to begin structured payments. If they failed, we'd be back before Judge Whitmore with a contempt motion. Vivian's restaurant hadn't turned a profit. It had been open 4 months and was hemorrhaging money. The equipment was leased. The lease on the building was 12 months, non-transferable. Every dollar she'd poured into Maggie May's table was a dollar stolen from me and built on a document that never should have existed. Rebecca called me on a Friday afternoon. "The system is moving, Helena. Let it do its work." I hung up and sat on my porch. The sun was going down. Somewhere, my father was reading criminal statutes with a lawyer he couldn't afford. I didn't feel better. I just felt right. Small towns have long memories and short fuses. Within 2 weeks of the hearing, everyone in my parents' circle knew. Not because I told them. I didn't post anything, didn't make a single call. The courtroom had done the work. A reporter from the county paper had published a short item in the court proceedings column, a civil fraud case involving a forged power of attorney and the sale of a deceased woman's property. No names, criminal charges hadn't been filed yet, but in a town of 11,000, everyone knew who lived on Lakeshore Drive. The phone calls came to me in a slow, steady wave. First, my Aunt Janet. She was crying. "I knew something was wrong at Thanksgiving when your father got so defensive about the house. I should have said something. I'm sorry, Helena." "It's okay, Aunt Janet. You didn't know." "I should have asked." Then cousins, old family friends, people who'd been at my grandmother's funeral. Some just left voicemails, short, awkward, kind. "Heard what happened. Thinking of you." A few admitted they'd called me ungrateful before the hearing and were ashamed. I responded to each one the same way. "Thank you. I appreciate you reaching out. But I need time." Not everyone was kind. 2 of Vivian's friends sent messages I didn't finish reading, accusations of jealousy, cruelty, ingratitude. I read the first lines, then deleted them. They didn't know me. They knew Vivian's version. One text stood out from the rest. An old neighbor of my parents, a man named Frank, who'd known my grandmother since the 1980s. He wrote, "Your grandmother was a good woman who raised a good granddaughter. I'm sorry it came to this." I saved that one. I read it on nights when I wasn't sure if what I'd done was worth the wreckage. It always was. Money reveals what character hides. Vivian couldn't pay. Maggie May's table had never turned a profit. It was a dream funded by stolen money and decorated with someone else's legacy. Within 6 weeks of the ruling, Vivian listed the restaurant's equipment for sale. The commercial lease couldn't be transferred. She negotiated an early termination with the landlord that cost her another $8,000 she didn't have. The sign came down on a Thursday. I know because Maggie Calloway drove past and told me. "That green sign with your grandmother's name on it," she said. "It's gone." Good. My father's situation was worse. The criminal defense attorney's fees were climbing. His retirement savings, the ones he'd guarded so meticulously all those years on his spreadsheets, were bleeding out. He and my mother put the family home on Birchwood Lane up for sale, the house where I grew up, the house where he'd sat at the head of the table and decided what happened to everyone in it. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental apartment on the east side of town. My mother sent me one final text. "I hope you can live with yourself." I read it. I didn't respond. I saved it. Habit by now. Vivian moved to Asheville. She got a job managing someone else's restaurant. No ownership. No sign with her name on it. No Instagram posts about legacy. I didn't celebrate any of this. There's nothing to celebrate when your family burns down and you're the one holding the match, even if the fire was their fault. But I did one thing. I took a portion of the restitution and contacted my old high school. I set up a small scholarship fund for graduating seniors planning to serve. Military, Peace Corps, AmeriCorps. Anything that took them away from home to do something larger than themselves. I named it the Margaret Wolfe Memorial Scholarship. Not because I wanted anyone to know, because my grandmother always said, "Help the ones who have no one in their corner." She would have liked that. I drove to Lake Meredith on a Saturday in November. I didn't plan it. I'd been running errands, dry cleaning, oil change, the ordinary machinery of a life reassembled, and found myself on the county road that led to the lake. I followed it without thinking, the way your body remembers a route your mind has tried to forget. The house was still there. New paint, a soft gray, replacing the white I remembered. New fence. The porch railing had been replaced, and the old wooden swing was gone. In the front yard, the new owners had planted sunflowers, tall and heavy-headed, leaning toward the road. I pulled over and turned off the engine. The dock was visible through the side yard. Same shape, same weathered wood. The water behind it was flat and silver, catching the November light. I remembered the summer I was 12. My grandmother sitting on the end of that dock, bare feet in the water, a paperback in her lap. I'd asked her why she liked the lake so much. "Because water always finds its way, Helena." She hadn't looked up from her book. You can dam it. You can divert it. But it always finds the path forward. I sat in my car and looked at the sunflowers. They hadn't been there when it was ours. Nothing about the property was mine anymore. Not the gray paint, not the new fence, not the dock. But the memory of her sitting there, feet in the water, telling me to keep moving, that was mine. No forged signature could touch it. No courtroom could award it to someone else. I started the engine, pulled back onto the road. The radio came on. Some country song I didn't know, steel guitar and a woman's voice singing about going home. I rolled down the window and let the lake air fill the car. The house wasn't mine anymore. But what it taught me, that no one gets to take what's yours just because they're louder or closer or more willing to lie, that was mine forever. 6 months passed. I stayed at Fort Liberty. I was promoted to a new logistics position, one I'd put in for before deployment and forgotten about in the chaos. The Army doesn't care about your family drama. It cares about performance. I showed up every day, ran my section, and let the work steady me. I rented a small place near Jordan Lake. Not much. 1 bedroom, a screened porch, a dock shared with 2 other units. On Saturday mornings, I sat on that dock with coffee and watched the herons work the shallows. It wasn't Lake Meredith. It wasn't my grandmother's house, but it had water and quiet and the sound of nothing going wrong. I didn't contact my parents. My mother mailed me 2 handwritten letters. I recognized her looping script on the envelopes. I opened them, read them. They were full of hurt and accusation and, in the second one, a thin thread of something that might have been regret. I put them in a drawer. My father was negotiating a plea deal through his criminal attorney. I didn't follow the details. Rebecca kept me informed when it mattered. That was enough. Vivian was in Asheville, working, silent. The person I spoke to most was Maggie Calloway. She called every Sunday afternoon. We talked about small things. Her garden, my work, the weather at the lake. Sometimes she told me stories about my grandmother. Sometimes she just listened. "I'm not trying to replace Margaret," she told me once. "I know. But I'm here, as long as you need." I also joined a veterans support group that met Wednesday evenings at the community center near base. I didn't share my story for the first month, but when I did, briefly, without self-pity, several people in the circle nodded. They'd lost things too. Different things. But the shape of the loss was familiar. One woman said afterward, "You didn't lose your family in combat." She looked at me. "You lost them at a notary's desk." I never forgot that. The letter arrived through Maggie. Vivian had mailed it to Maggie's address. She didn't have my new one. 2 handwritten pages, front and back, in Vivian's tight, slanted script. Maggie called before forwarding it. I didn't read it, but I wanted you to know it was coming. I opened it that evening on the screened porch, with the last light coming through the trees. Vivian wrote the way she talked, direct, a little unpolished. No flourish. She didn't start with an apology. She started with a confession. I knew the money came from the house. I knew Dad forged your signature. I told myself it didn't matter because you were gone and the army takes care of you anyway. But that's a lie I told myself so I wouldn't feel guilty. The truth is, I didn't want to feel guilty. So I made it your problem instead of mine. She wrote about the restaurant, about how it failed not because of the lawsuit, but because she'd never had a real plan. About how she'd used Grandma's name as a brand without earning it. She didn't ask me to forgive her. That surprised me. You don't owe me anything, she wrote at the end. I just needed you to know that I know what I did. And I know it was wrong. I read the letter twice, sat with it for a while, listened to the frogs down by the water. I didn't know if she meant it. Maybe she did. Maybe it was another performance. But I realized it didn't matter. Not right now. My healing wasn't dependent on her sincerity. My peace wasn't a door she could open or close. I wrote back. Short. 1 paragraph. I read your letter. Thank you for writing it. I'm not ready for more than that. Take care of yourself, Vivian. I sealed it, stamped it, drove it to the post office the next morning. It wasn't an open door, but it wasn't a wall either. It was a boundary. And boundaries, I'd learned, don't have to be angry to be real. So that's my story. I'm not telling it because I want sympathy. I'm not telling it because I want you to hate my family. I'm telling it because I know that some of you are listening to this right now with a knot in your stomach because you recognize something. Maybe it's a parent who treats your silence as permission. Maybe it's a sibling who takes and calls it family. Maybe it's the way someone you love made a decision about your life, your money, your property, your time. And when you pushed back, they said you were the problem. If that's you, I want to say something. You are not ungrateful for protecting yourself. You are not selfish for saying no, and you are not alone. My grandmother taught me that water always finds its way. I lost her Lakehouse. I lost the family. Or what I thought was a family. But I found my own path. It runs through a small apartment near Jordan Lake, through a courtroom where I stood in my uniform and told the truth, through a Sunday phone call with an old woman in a blue cardigan who promised my grandmother she'd look out for me. Setting a boundary isn't punishment, it's self-respect with a return address. I don't know what happens next with my father, with Vivian, with my mother. Maybe one day we'll sit in the same room again. Maybe we won't. But I know this. Whatever happens, it'll happen on terms I've chosen. Not terms that were forged in my name while I was 6,000 miles away, serving a country that at least had the decency to put its agreements in writing. If you've ever set a boundary, or if you're working up the courage to set one, tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying to the end. If this story stayed with you, I have one question. Which moment hit the hardest? The judge's ruling, or Helena standing at the lake one last time? Drop your answer below. And if you want more stories about people who chose courage over comfort, family drama that ends with justice, and boundaries that changed everything, check the description for more. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for being here. My 5-year-old daughter was standing in the driveway holding her stuffed bear, while aftershock dust still hung in the air. My father looked at her, then looked at me, and said, "You can stay, but not her. There's no space." His wife's grandchildren had 3 rooms between them, including a game room. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just said, "Noted." 3 days later, my father opened his front door to a man in a suit holding a certified envelope, and his face lost every ounce of color. My name is Stella Prescott. I'm 34, an ER nurse, and a single mom. And this is the story of how I stopped begging my family for a place at their table and took back what was mine. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Now, let me take you back to a Tuesday in October, the day the ground shook, and everything I thought I knew about my family cracked wide open. There's a particular kind of tired that only ER nurses understand. It isn't just in your bones. It lives behind your eyes, in the space between your thoughts, in the way your hands still smell like nitrile gloves 2 showers later. That Tuesday morning, I came through the front door of our second-floor apartment on Maple Ridge Avenue at 7:15 a.m., 12 hours of chest compressions and IV lines still buzzing in my fingers, and the first thing I saw was Lily. She was sitting at the kitchen table in her unicorn pajamas, bare feet dangling off the chair, a blue crayon in her fist. Biscuit, her stuffed bear, loved bald along one ear, sat propped beside her cereal bowl like a tiny breakfast companion. She didn't look up right away. She was drawing. "Mama, look." She held up the paper. A rectangle with a triangle roof, 2 crooked windows, and a red door we didn't actually have. Above the roofline, she'd drawn 2 hearts, just floating there, like they were keeping the house from blowing away. "That's our house, Mama." I taped it to the fridge next to last week's butterfly. That fridge door was the only gallery that mattered. I made her a sandwich. Peanut butter, crust cut off, sliced into a butterfly shape because I'd done it once when she was 3, and now it was law. My eyes were closing on their own. But I sat with her, and we talked about the butterfly, and I plugged in the little star-shaped nightlight she couldn't sleep without, even during daytime naps. On the shelf by the hallway closet, there was a cardboard box with Mom's things written in my own handwriting from years ago. My mother's belongings, what little I'd kept. I hadn't opened it fully in years. I wish I had sooner. Let me tell you about Thanksgiving. Last November, my father Gerald invited me and Lily to his house for the holiday. "Family's family," he said on the phone, in the voice he uses when he wants to sound warm but doesn't quite get there. I bought a new dress for Lily, sunflower yellow, her favorite. I made a sweet potato casserole from scratch at 2 in the morning between shifts. When we arrived, the dining room table was set for 8. China plates, cloth napkins, the works. My stepmother Diane had outdone herself. Candles, a centerpiece with dried eucalyptus, place cards written in her careful cursive. Lily's name wasn't on any of them. "Oh, sweetie," Diane said, her hand fluttering to her chest the way it does when she's about to say something terrible with a smile. "The kids' table is so much cozier for Lily. It's right in the kitchen, she'll love it." The kids' table was a folding card table with paper plates. Lily sat there alone. My half-sister Megan's 2 children, 7 and 4, were at the main table, flanking my father like little sentries. Gerald had his arm around Megan's oldest, ruffling his hair. "There's my boy." When Lily waved at him from the kitchen doorway, he nodded. Just a nod. Like she was a neighbor's kid he was being polite to. I cut Lily's turkey into small pieces. I told myself, at least she has grandparents. At least she has somewhere to go on holidays. I'd been telling myself that for 24 years. At one point during dinner, Diane stepped into the hallway to take a phone call. I heard 2 words before she lowered her voice. Birchwood House. I didn't know what that meant. Not then. I should explain something about the math in my father's house. It's a particular kind of arithmetic where one daughter's needs always round up and the other's always round down. Megan, my half-sister, 29, Diane's biological daughter, got a car at 19. A used Honda, nothing extravagant, but Gerald drove it to the house with a bow on the hood. When I turned 19, I was already working nights at a nursing home to pay for community college. No car, no beau. When I asked once, just once, Gerald said, "Megan needs help. You're independent. You should be proud." I filed that sentence away. I filed a lot of sentences away. Megan's daycare? Gerald paid. My student loans? Mine. Megan's rent when she moved back in with 2 kids? 0. because she never left. My rent, 38% of a paycheck that was already stretched across diapers, formula, and a second-floor apartment with a radiator that banged like a fist all winter. Every time I noticed the gap, I'd hear Diane's voice in my head. "You're so sensitive, Stella." Or Gerald's. "Don't start." After enough years, I stopped starting, I stopped noticing. Or I told myself I did. But Lily noticed things I tried not to. One Sunday, she came home from Gerald's house and showed me a drawing she'd made. Our family. She'd drawn 6 people. Me, her, Gerald, Diane, Megan, and Megan's kids. In the picture, everyone was holding hands in a line. Except Lily. She'd drawn herself standing a little to the side, holding Biscuit. "Mama, how come I'm always the extra one?" She was 4 when she said that. I didn't know then that my independence wasn't something I'd chosen. It was something they'd stolen from me. Literally. The earthquake hit at 2:47 on a Tuesday afternoon. I had just picked Lily up from preschool. We were in the apartment. She was on the living room rug showing Biscuit a picture book, when the floor moved. Not shook. Moved. Like something massive had turned over beneath us. The bookshelf went first. It swayed once and then tipped forward, spilling paperbacks and picture frames across the carpet. Lily screamed. I grabbed her and pulled us both under the kitchen table, my body over hers, my hand pressing her head against my chest. I could feel her heart hammering through her shirt, fast, small, like a bird trapped in a paper bag. The shaking lasted 11 seconds. It felt like a year. Then the aftershock, 15 minutes later. Shorter, but enough to crack the load-bearing wall in the hallway from floor to ceiling. A chunk of ceiling plaster came down in the bathroom. Dust hung in the air like fog. The building groaned. By evening, the landlord arrived with a city inspector. Red tag. The building was structurally compromised, pending full inspection. Everyone out by tomorrow morning. I stood in the parking lot with Lily on my hip, watching our neighbors carry boxes to their cars. I called my renter's insurance from the hood of my Corolla. Coverage for damaged belongings? Yes. Temporary housing assistance? No. Not under my policy. The nearest motel was $89 a night. I had $1,100 in checking. That was rent money. That was all of it. Lily was quiet. She had Biscuit in a death grip, and her eyes were glassy, and she kept looking back at the building like she was waiting for it to fall. There was one number I hadn't dialed in months, my father's. I sat in my car in the parking lot and made the call. Gerald picked up on the 4th ring. I could hear a television in the background. Some game show, audience applause, Diane laughing at something. Normal evening sounds in a house with 4 bedrooms and a game room and no structural cracks running down the walls. "Dad, we had an earthquake. Our building's been red-tagged. Lily and I need a place to stay for a couple of weeks until I figure something out." Silence. Then, "Hold on." I heard him set the phone down. Muffled voices. Diane's voice. Low, quick, sharp. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew the tone. I'd been hearing that tone for 24 years. It was the tone that preceded every no I'd ever received in that house, always wrapped in something reasonable. Gerald came back on. He cleared his throat. "You can come, Stella, but Diane says there's no room for the girl. Megan's kids have their rooms, the game room. You know how it is. It's tight." "Dad, she's 5. She can sleep on my floor, on a sleeping bag. She just needs a safe place." Another pause. Diane's voice again, clearer this time, close to the phone. "Tell her it's only temporary anyway. The girl can stay with a friend or something." The girl? Not Lily, not your granddaughter. The girl. Gerald sighed. "It's Diane's house, too. She says no space. Just you. We can figure something out for the child." I looked in the rearview mirror. Lily was in her car seat, Biscuit pulled tight to her chin, watching the red-tagged building through the window, dust still in her hair. "Noted," I said, and I hung up. I drove. I didn't know where yet. I just needed the car to move, needed the road to unspool in front of me so I wouldn't have to sit still with what had just happened. The streetlights were coming on. Caldwell looked the same as it always did at 6:30 in the evening. People walking dogs, sprinklers running on lawns, the taco truck parked outside the hardware store. The world hadn't ended. It just felt like it. Lily was quiet for 6 blocks. Then, "Mama, are we going to Grandpa's house?" My hands tightened on the wheel. "No, baby, we're going to Auntie Rachel's." "Oh." A pause, then smaller. "Is it because Grandpa doesn't have room for me?" I almost hit the curb. "Am I too big?" I pulled over. I put the car in park on a residential street I didn't recognize, under a sycamore tree that was dropping leaves onto the windshield, and I turned around in my seat. Lily wasn't crying. Her eyes were wide and serious, and she was looking down at Biscuit like she was asking him the same question. I reached back and took her hand. It was so small. It was always so small. "Lily, you are not too big. You are not too much. And you will always, always have room with me. Do you understand?" She nodded. Hugged Biscuit. Looked out the window. She didn't cry. And somehow, that was worse than if she had. I turned back to the road and drove. My jaw ached from clenching. Something had shifted inside me. Not the hot kind of anger, not the kind that makes you shout. Something colder. Something with patience. I opened my phone's notes app at the next red light and typed, October 14th, 6:22 p.m. Gerald refused shelter for Lily. Diane. No space. Direct quote, "The girl." That was timestamp number 1. Rachel didn't ask a single question. She opened the door, saw Lily on my hip with dust still in her hair, saw the duffel bag over my shoulder and whatever was living on my face, and stepped aside. "Guest room's made up. There's mac and cheese on the stove." That was Rachel Tobin, 35, fellow ER nurse, built like a point guard and just as direct. She'd been my person since our first code blue together 6 years ago, when she'd looked at me over a crashing patient and said, "You're good at this. Don't let anyone tell you different." We'd been friends since. She put on a cartoon for Lily, made her a cup of warm milk with honey. Within 5 minutes, Lily was asleep on Rachel's couch, Biscuit tucked under her chin, her breathing finally slow and even. First real rest since 2:47 that afternoon. Rachel handed me a mug of tea I hadn't asked for and sat down across from me. "Tell me," I told her. She didn't interrupt. She didn't gasp. When I finished, she said very quietly, "That's not a space problem, Stella. That's a priority problem." At 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed. Gerald. "Stella, don't be dramatic. Diane didn't mean it like that. She just meant the house is tight right now. You know Megan's kids need their rooms for school. Lily is 5. She needs a floor and a blanket. Your house has 4 bedrooms. You're twisting things. You always do this. This is why it's hard with you." I stared at the ceiling. Classic. Turn the victim into the problem. I hung up and opened Instagram. Megan had posted 2 hours ago a photo of the game room with 2 new beanbag chairs, sparkle filter, caption, "Best surprise for my babies. #blessed #family. First, I screenshotted it." Timestamp number 2. The next morning, my phone rang while I was pouring Lily's cereal. The screen read, "Diane Whitmore." In 7 years of having her number, she had never once called me directly. Every communication went through Gerald, a system she'd designed, I realized much later, so there'd never be a record of her own words. Until now. "Stella, sweetie, hi." Warm, musical. The voice she uses at school functions and church picnics. "I am just so sorry about the earthquake. I've been thinking about you all night." "Thank you, Diane. Listen, I talked to your father and we really do want to help. You are welcome here, of course you are. But I think it would be better for everyone if Lily stayed with your friend for a bit. Just until things settle. Megan's youngest just started sleeping through the night, and you know how it is. Another child in the house. The disruption." "Lily isn't disruption. She's 5, and she's quiet." "Oh, sweetie, I don't mean it like that. She's just a lot. You know, active. And honestly, she lowered her voice, as if sharing a confidence. If you'd had a husband, this wouldn't even be an issue, would it? The kitchen faucet dripped twice. I watched a bead of water fall. I didn't take the bait. Not the husband comment, not the tone, not the sweetie. I let 5 seconds of silence sit there. I understand your position, Diane, clearly. Oh, good, sweetie, I'm so glad we can. I said I understand it. I didn't say I accept it. Don't call me about this again. I hung up. Then I wrote down every word in my notes app while it was fresh. Timestamp number 3. And there was something Diane had said. A small thing. Maybe nothing. Besides, this house was supposed to be for our family anyway. This house. Supposed to be. Our family. Anyway. I didn't know what it meant. But I underlined it. That night, after Lily was asleep, I lay on Rachel's guest bed and let the memories come. Not the soft focus kind, the accounting kind. My 16th birthday, Megan, then 11, had gotten a full party the year before. Catered, 30 kids, a DJ in the garage. For my 16, Gerald handed me a card with a $20 bill and said, "We forgot to plan something. Sorry, kid." Diane was in Cancun with her sister that week. Nobody forgot. I just wasn't worth remembering. My nursing school graduation, 4 years of night shifts and study sessions in hospital break rooms, and I walked across that stage alone. Gerald said he couldn't make it. Megan had a dance recital. A recital. For an 11-year-old. He chose a pirouette over a diploma. The day Lily was born. Gerald showed up at the hospital 20 minutes after delivery. He stood in the doorway. Didn't hold her. Didn't sit down. "You should have waited until you were married," he said. Then he left. Diane didn't come at all. When Megan had her first baby 3 years later, Diane moved in for 3 weeks. Gerald bought an $800 crib and cried in the delivery room. I kept a list of these moments for years. Not written down, just etched into the soft tissue of my memory. The Christmas I was 13, and found 3 gifts under the tree for me, and 11 for Megan. The Easters where Lily's basket was a paper bag. The way Diane introduced me at neighborhood barbecues. "This is Gerald's daughter from before." From before. Like I was a rough draft. But the worst thing they ever did to me wasn't a forgotten birthday or a skipped graduation. It was the thing they took. The thing I didn't even know existed. Not yet. But that was about to change. For years I carried this question like a stone in my pocket. Was I the difficult one? Was I too sensitive? Too needy? Too much? The way they always said? I rearranged myself so many times to fit into that family that I forgot what my original shape looked like. I wonder if you know that feeling. If you've ever shrunk yourself to keep the peace, and then one day looked in the mirror and couldn't find what was missing. Tell me in the comments, because I don't think I was the only one folding herself into smaller and smaller squares. I need to tell you about my grandmother. Her name was Edith Prescott, my mother's mother. After my mom died in a car accident when I was 8, Grandma Edith was the one who kept me breathing. Every other weekend she'd pick me up in her green Buick and drive me to her little house on Birchwood Street. I remember the lavender bushes along the front walk, the way the kitchen always smelled like cornbread and coffee, the creak of the porch swing where she'd read to me until the fireflies came out. Then Gerald married Diane. I was 10. The visits got shorter, then less frequent. Then Gerald started saying things. "Grandma's getting forgetful, Stella. It's too hard for her." Then, she moved. Somewhere in Arizona, I think. Then, "She doesn't want to confuse you, sweetheart. It's better this way." By 12, I stopped asking. I believed him. I believed that the woman who used to braid my hair and sing me hymns in the kitchen had simply decided I wasn't worth the drive anymore. That grief does that to people. That maybe she looked at me and saw my dead daughter, and it was too much. I carried that for 22 years. The belief that I had been gently, lovingly abandoned by the last person on my mother's side who might have claimed me. But lying in Rachel's guest room that night, staring at the ceiling, one word floated up through the dark. Birchwood. Diane had said the Birchwood house on the phone at Thanksgiving. My grandmother had lived on Birchwood Street. I sat up. My pulse was doing something it only does in the ER, that focused clinical acceleration that means something important is happening. I walked to the closet. The box marked Mom's Things was on top of the stack. I opened it. It was 2 a.m. Rachel's house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the small ticking of a wall clock somewhere down the hall. I sat cross-legged on the guest room floor and lifted the flaps of the box I'd carried through 4 apartments and never fully unpacked. My mother's reading glasses, tortoiseshell, one arm bent, a scarf that still smelled faintly like her, or maybe I just needed it to. 3 birthday cards she'd written me before she died, tucked in a rubber band. A small gold locket with a photo of us, me at 5, her at 31, the same age I was when I had Lily. At the bottom, underneath a folded quilt, there was a large manila envelope. It was yellowed at the edges, postmarked 2003, and the return address read, Edith Prescott, 412 Birchwood Street, Caldwell, California, 93711. My hands were shaking when I opened it. Inside, a letter, handwritten on lavender stationery in my grandmother's careful script, and behind the letter, a stapled document, dense, legal, notarized. The letter read, My dearest Stella, your mama would want you to always have a home. I've set up a trust for you. The Prescott Family Trust. The house on Birchwood and $210,000 in savings. When you turn 25, it's all yours. I love you, baby girl. Don't let anyone tell you you're not wanted. Grandma Edith. The document was a copy of the trust deed, dated 2004. The Prescott Family Trust. Sole beneficiary, Stella Marie Prescott. Trustee, Gerald A. Whitmore. I turned 25 in 2016. That was 9 years ago. Nobody told me. Not once. Not ever. A trust. A house. $210,000. And my father, the man who said there was no room for Lily, was the one holding the keys. I didn't sleep. I sat on that guest room floor with the trust deed spread across my lap and opened my phone. First search, 412 Birchwood Street, Caldwell, California. The county assessor's office had the records online. Property, single-family residence, 1,420 square feet, built 1967. Current ownership status, sold, April 2019. Transferee, Gerald A. Whitmore and Diane K. Whitmore. Transfer type, quitclaim deed. Sale price recorded, $0. $0. A free transfer from the Prescott Family Trust to my father and his wife, on a house that was supposed to be mine. Second search, Edith Prescott, Caldwell, California. Results, Sunridge Senior Community, Tucson, Arizona. Resident profile, Activities Committee member, age, 82. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. She was alive. She was in Tucson. She was on an activities committee. She hadn't disappeared. She hadn't forgotten me. She hadn't chosen to stop caring. She'd been cut off. The same way you cut a phone line, deliberately at the source, so the person on the other end thinks nobody's calling. I went back to the property records. The trail was simple once you knew where to look. In 2019, Gerald transferred 412 Birchwood from the trust to himself and Diane, using a quitclaim deed that apparently bore my signature. That same spring, they sold their old house across town. Used the Birchwood equity and the trust funds as a down payment on their current home, the 4-bedroom with the game room and the beanbag chairs, and absolutely no space for a 5-year-old girl with a stuffed bear. My father had stolen my inheritance, sold my grandmother's house, and used the money to build a home where my daughter wasn't welcome. I closed the laptop. My hands were steady now, steady as they've ever been, and I was done being sensitive. I waited until 7 a.m, Arizona time, to call. I didn't want to scare an 82-year-old woman. I also didn't trust my voice yet, so I paced Rachel's backyard in the gray morning light, rehearsing what to say, until I realized there was no way to rehearse something like this. Sunridge Senior Community's front desk patched me through. 3 rings. Then a voice. Thin but clear. With the same slight rasp I remembered from childhood bedtime stories. Hello? Grandma, it's Stella. Silence. 1 second, 2, 3. I heard a sharp intake of breath. Stella, is that baby girl? And I broke. Not loud, I'm not a loud crier, but the tears came fast and hot, and I pressed my hand over my mouth in Rachel's backyard and let 22 years of believing I'd been forgotten drain out of me. She was crying too. I could hear it in the way her words caught. I've been writing to you every Christmas for 22 years, she said. Every single one came back. Your father told me you didn't want contact. He said you'd moved on. He said it would only confuse Lily to have... He told me the same thing about you. Another silence. This one heavier. I told her what I'd found. The trust deed, the property transfer, the $0 quitclaim. I heard her breathing change, sharpen. I never authorized any sale or withdrawal, Stella. Never. That trust was for you. Only you. Grandma, I think he forged my signature. A long pause. When she spoke again, her voice wasn't thin anymore. It was steel. Then we're going to get it back. Every cent. Every brick. She told me she still had copies of everything, including 22 return-to-sender envelopes. Every Christmas letter she'd mailed me, sent back in Gerald's handwriting. Call a lawyer, baby girl. Today. I'll tell you exactly which documents to ask for. Rachel knew a guy. Actually, Rachel knew a guy who knew a guy. Her cousin's divorce attorney, who referred us to Nathan Okafor, a trust and estate litigation lawyer with an office on Caldwell Boulevard, and 15 years of experience peeling apart exactly this kind of mess. I called him that afternoon. He had an opening the next morning. His office smelled like printer toner and black coffee. He was tall, mid-40s, with reading glasses he kept pushing up his nose, and a calm that reminded me of the best surgeons I'd worked with. The ones who never raise their voice because they don't need to. I laid everything on his desk. The trust deed, my grandmother's letter, the property records printout, the quitclaim transfer. He read each document once, then again, then removed his glasses and looked at me. Ms. Prescott, as trustee, your father had a fiduciary duty to manage this trust solely in your interest. Selling the property and distributing the funds without your knowledge or consent is a breach of that duty. And if your signature on these documents is forged? He tapped the quitclaim deed. That's felony forgery under California Penal Code 470. He outlined the steps. First, a beneficiary request letter. Certified mail. Return receipt. To Pacific Western Trust Company demanding all distribution records, withdrawal authorizations, and associated signatures. The bank had 30 days to respond. Second, once we had the documents, a forensic document examiner would compare the signatures. He already had someone. Dr. Laura Sims, court qualified, frequently used by the DA's office. If the signatures don't match, Nathan said, we file a petition in probate court and refer the forgery to the district attorney. This isn't just a civil matter, Ms. Prescott. This is potentially criminal. Then he said the thing that stopped me cold. One more thing. If those trust funds were used as a down payment on your father's current home, that house is traceable proceeds, meaning the house they told your daughter there was no room in may not even legally be theirs. You know what I kept thinking, sitting in that leather chair with the trust deed in my lap? That every time Gerald said, "You're independent, you should be proud," he wasn't complimenting me. He was covering his tracks. Every time Diane said, "You're so sensitive," she was making sure I'd never look too closely. They turned my own self-doubt into a lock on a door I didn't know existed. Have you ever realized that the thing people criticized you for was actually protecting them, not you? I think about that a lot now. Nathan mailed the beneficiary request that same afternoon. Certified. Return receipt requested. Tracking number logged. The letter went to Pacific Western Trust Company's Legal Compliance Department, demanding every document associated with the Prescott Family Trust, distribution authorizations, withdrawal receipts, notarized signatures, Correspondence. 30 days to respond? 30 days. In the ER, 30 minutes can mean the difference between a save and a code. 30 days felt like a geological age, but Nathan was clear. Don't tip them off. Don't confront your father. Don't mention the trust Birchwood or your grandmother. If he suspects you're building a case, he'll destroy what he can. So I played the part. The hardest role I've ever held. And I've held a mother's hand while telling her that her son didn't make it. Gerald called twice that week. Casual, checking in, asking if I'd figured things out with housing. His voice was so normal it made my skin crawl. Normal the way a bandage looks clean when the wound underneath is septic. Working on it, I said. That was all I gave him. On Thursday, he called again. You're not still upset about the room thing, are you? Diane feels terrible. He said this the way you'd report weather. Light rain. Diane feels terrible. Might clear up by the weekend. I'm fine, Dad. Good. That's my girl. I hung up and swallowed something hot and sour at the back of my throat. That evening, Lily was at Rachel's kitchen table again, drawing. She held up the new picture. A house. Bigger this time, with 3 windows and a garden and a red door. She'd written 2 words at the top in wobbly kindergarten letters. Our house. This is where we're gonna live, Mama, I decided. I stuck it to the fridge next to the others. Then I went to the bathroom, shut the door, and pressed my forehead against the cool tile until my breathing evened out. 27 days to go. The documents arrived on a Tuesday. Nathan called at 10:14 a.m. Come to my office. Bring nothing. Touch nothing when you get here. I'll show you everything. 40 minutes later, I was sitting across from his desk, and he was laying out 3 documents side by side like a surgeon displaying x-rays. The first, Trust Distribution Authorization, dated March 14, 2019. A request to Pacific Western Trust Company to release $210,000 from the Prescott Family Trust to Gerald A. Whitmore. At the bottom, a signature, Stella M. Prescott. The second, Quitclaim Deed, dated April 2, 2019. Transfer of property at 412 Birchwood Street from the Prescott Family Trust to Gerald A. Whitmore and Diane K. Whitmore. Another signature, Stella M. Prescott. I leaned in close. The handwriting was careful. Someone had practiced, but the S was wrong. I've signed my name 10,000 times on patient charts, on medication orders, on insurance forms. My S starts with a sharp downstroke. This one curved. And my P in Prescott has a closed loop at the top. A habit from my mother's handwriting that I copied as a child. This P was open. It wasn't my signature. It wasn't close. Nathan slid a 3rd page across the desk. Dr. Laura Sims, Forensic Document Examiner, her preliminary analysis. I read the key line. Based on comparison with known exemplars, the questioned signatures exhibit significant divergence in letter formation, pen pressure, and baseline alignment. Preliminary conclusion: high probability the questioned signatures were not produced by the stated signatory. Final report in 10 days, Nathan said. But, Ms. Prescott, it's confirmed. He pointed to the notary stamp on the quitclaim deed. The name printed beneath it, Janet L. Fry. He'd already looked her up. Janet Fry was a friend of Diane's. They'd worked together at the school district for years. A notarized document signed by someone who wasn't there, stamped by the stepmother's friend. This wasn't carelessness. This was planned. 2 days after the documents arrived, Gerald invited me to dinner. Just me. No drama, no big deal. Diane's making pot roast. We just want to see you. Nathan said, Go. Observe. Say nothing of substance. California is a 2-party consent state, so no recording, but write down everything the moment you leave. I went. The house smelled like rosemary and onions. Diane greeted me at the door with a hug that lasted exactly 1 second too long, the kind designed to be witnessed. Megan was on the couch with her kids, who were running laps between the living room and the game room. The game room, with its beanbag chairs and wall-mounted TV, and enough square footage for a child-sized sleeping bag, If that child's name had been something other than Lily. Dinner was normal. Excessively normal. Diane complimented my scrubs. Gerald asked about the hospital. Megan showed me photos of her kids' Halloween costumes on her phone. Everyone smiled. Nobody mentioned the earthquake. Nobody mentioned the fact that my daughter was sleeping at a friend's house because this family had turned her away. Then, between the pot roast and dessert, Gerald leaned back in his chair and said, casually, the way you'd ask someone to pass the salt, "Hey, by the way, you haven't been getting any weird mail, have you? Some trust company sent something to our address by mistake. Junk mail, probably." His eyes sharpened. Just for a second. Just enough for me to see. "Trust company," I said. "No. Why would they?" He relaxed, reached for his water glass. "No reason, just junk." Diane changed the subject to Megan's birthday party next weekend. I helped clear the plates. I said goodnight. I walked to my car. Then I opened my notes app. October 29th. 7:48 p.m. Gerald asked about trust company mail. Nervous. Diane redirected conversation immediately. He knew something was moving. He just didn't know how much. The smear campaign started on a Wednesday. I woke up to 11 text messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. Aunt Carol, Gerald's sister. "Stella, I'm hearing some troubling things. Your father is heartbroken." Uncle Roy. "Family shouldn't sue family. Whatever this is, you need to drop it." A cousin I'd met twice. "Diane says you're going through something. We're praying for you. Praying for me." That's the phrase people use when they've decided you're the problem and they want you to know it without getting their hands dirty. I scrolled through the group chat Gerald's family used for holidays and birthdays. Diane had posted a message at 9 p.m. the night before, a paragraph and a half, perfectly punctuated, dripping with rehearsed anguish. "As many of you know, Stella has been going through a difficult time since the earthquake. Unfortunately, she is now making false accusations against Gerald and me regarding family finances. We are devastated. We have done nothing but love and support her for 24 years, and this is how she repays us. Please keep our family in your thoughts." 63 heart reactions, 22 comments. Not one person asked for my side. Then Gerald called. No more pot roast voice, cold. "I don't know what you're doing, Stella, but you need to stop. This is family business. You're embarrassing yourself." I said nothing. "Are you listening to me?" "I'm listening." "Then fix this." I hung up. Megan posted on Facebook that evening. Public. When someone bites the hand that feeds them. Prayers for my parents who've done nothing but love unconditionally. 47 likes within the hour. I screenshotted everything. Every message, every comment, every timestamp. I forwarded them to Nathan in a single email with one line. For the file. I didn't defend myself in the group chat. A defense implies there's a trial of opinion. I wasn't interested in opinions. I was interested in evidence. Nathan called that night. His voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. "Forensic report is in. It's confirmed. Signatures are forged. Are you ready to file?" I sat in Nathan's office at 8:30 the next morning and signed my name, my real name, the one nobody had to forge, on every document he put in front of me. The probate court petition was 32 pages. It read like a medical chart for a dying family, clinical, precise, and devastating. Breach of fiduciary duty by trustee Gerald A. Whitmore. Fraudulent transfer of trust real property at 412 Birchwood Street. Unauthorized distribution of $210,000 in trust funds. Demand for full restitution, plus accrued interest. Removal of Gerald as trustee and appointment of an independent successor. Attached. The trust deed, the forged distribution authorization, the forged quitclaim deed, Dr. Sims's forensic report, and 22 pages of property records. Separately, Nathan filed a criminal referral with the Caldwell County District Attorney's Office. Forgery under California Penal Code Section 470, notary fraud, and a flag for elder financial exploitation. Because Edith Prescott had been systematically cut off from her granddaughter while her trust assets were looted. And from Tucson, overnight, FedEx delivered the final piece. Grandma Edith's sworn declaration, notarized at Sunridge Senior Community, 6 pages of her clear, firm handwriting converted to typed text and signed with a hand that didn't shake. She stated she had established the trust, never authorized any distribution, never signed any transfer documents, and had been told by Gerald that Stella did not wish to have contact, a claim she now knew to be false, evidenced by 22 Christmas letters returned in Gerald's handwriting. Nathan filed everything with the court that afternoon. Then he prepared the certified demand letter, 14-day response deadline, addressed to Gerald and Diane Whitmore at their current residence. "Once this is served," Nathan said, "there's no taking it back." I looked at the stack of documents on his desk. 9 years of theft, 22 years of lies. One 5-year-old girl told there was no room for her. I wasn't the one who started this. I'm just the one finishing it. The certified demand letter was delivered on a Monday at 11:47 a.m. I know the exact time because USPS tracking updated on my phone while I was starting an IV on a 60-year-old man with chest pains. I glanced at the notification, delivered, signed by G. Whitmore, and went back to my patient. The ER doesn't pause for family implosions. Gerald called at 6:32 that evening. I was buckling Lily into her car seat outside Rachel's apartment. I answered on speaker by accident, then quickly took it off. His voice was different. Not the patriarch voice, not the pot roast voice. Something I'd never heard from him before, the voice of a man reading a document he can't make disappear. "Stella, what is this? What have you done? You have 14 days to respond through your attorney. I have nothing else to say to you." "This is insane. I'm your father. You can't—" Diane is hysterical. She's— In the background, Diane. Not the musical church picnic voice now. High, shredded, and beneath that, Megan crying. "That trust was family money, Stella. I managed it for everyone's benefit." I caught that. I managed it. Not I didn't do it. Not there's been a mistake. He managed it. Past tense. Admission wrapped in justification. "You managed it into your down payment. 14 days, Dad." I hung up. He called back. 4 times in 20 minutes. I let each one ring through to voicemail. I didn't listen to any of them. I saved them. Rachel was waiting at the door. She looked at my face and handed me a mug of chamomile without a word. "How do you feel?" I sat on her couch. Lily was inside, drawing at the table again. Another house. More windows this time. More hearts on the roof. Like I should have done this years ago. Diane did not go quietly. I didn't expect her to. Quiet isn't in the playbook of someone who's spent 24 years controlling a family's narrative with sweet smiles and strategic phone calls. The escalation came in 3 waves. Wave 1, the extended family. Diane called my mother's sister, Aunt June, who lived in Oregon and hadn't spoken to Gerald in years. Told her I was fabricating allegations about a trust that never existed, and that I was emotionally unstable since the earthquake. Aunt June, to her credit, called me and asked for my side. I told her to call Grandma Edith. Wave 2, social media. Diane posted a 12-paragraph essay on Facebook. Public. I won't quote the whole thing, but the opening line was, "For 24 years I have tried to love a child who is not my own, and today my heart is shattered." 214 reactions. Comments full of prayer hands and crying emojis. A woman I'd never met called me ungrateful in the thread. Wave 3, Gerald's email. It arrived at 11 p.m., sent from his personal account to mine. "If you don't drop this, I will make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you are, leaving your child with strangers after an earthquake instead of coming to family. Think about what you're teaching Lily." Leaving my child with strangers. He meant Rachel, the woman who opened her door without conditions while he put conditions on a 5-year-old, and he was threatening to use my motherhood against me, the same man who didn't hold Lily when she was born. I forwarded the email to Nathan with 1 line. "Add this to the file." Nathan's response came in 4 minutes. "Retaliation. Potential witness intimidation. I'm supplementing the petition. This helps us, not them. I turned off my phone. Lily was asleep, biscuit under her chin. I watched her breathe for a long time. Teaching Lily? I was teaching her that nobody gets to steal your future and call it love. Grandma Edith landed at Caldwell Regional Airport on a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks before the court hearing. Southwest Airlines, 1 carry-on, orthopedic shoes, and a spine made of rebar. I spotted her at baggage claim before she saw me. She was smaller than I remembered, her shoulders narrower, her hair white where it used to be silver, but she stood the way she always had. Straight-backed, chin up, like a woman who'd buried a daughter and survived it and wasn't about to be bent by anything less. When she saw me, she stopped walking. Her hand came up to her mouth. And then she opened her arms, and I walked into them. And for a few seconds I was 8 years old again, standing in a lavender-scented kitchen on Birchwood Street, and nobody had lied to me yet. We drove to Rachel's house. Lily was in the living room, wearing a tutu over her jeans, arranging biscuit on a pillow throne. She looked up when we walked in, at this small, white-haired woman she'd never seen before. Grandma Edith knelt down, slowly, one knee at a time. "Hello, sweet girl. I'm your great-grandma Edith. I've been waiting a very long time to meet you." Lily studied her face with that 5-year-old seriousness that holds nothing back. "Do you like butterflies?" she asked. "Mama cuts my sandwiches into butterflies." "I love butterflies." Lily took her hand and led her to the kitchen table to see the drawings. Grandma Edith looked at each one as if they were hanging in a gallery. When she got to the one labeled Our House, she looked at me over Lily's head. Her eyes were wet. She nodded once. That night, after Lily was asleep, Grandma Edith placed a small cardboard box on Rachel's kitchen table. Inside, 22 envelopes. Each one addressed to me, each one stamped return to sender in handwriting I recognized immediately. Gerald's handwriting, 22 Christmases, every single one sent back. "I kept writing," she said quietly, "because I knew one day, one letter would find you. 22 letters. 22 Christmases." She never stopped. And I spent every single one of those years believing she'd forgotten me, because that's what Gerald told me, and I had no reason not to believe my own father. But here's what I can't stop thinking. How many people out there tried to love us, and someone made sure the message never arrived? Do you think there's someone who tried to reach you, and somebody stood in the way? Because I almost missed mine, by 22 years. Gerald's 14-day deadline expired on a Wednesday at 5 p.m. On day 10, his attorney, a man named Dennis Pratchett, who appeared to handle mostly traffic citations and small claims disputes, had sent a 2-page letter to Nathan requesting a 30-day extension and stating, in language that even I could tell was weak, that trust distributions were authorized by implied family consent and conducted in the best interest of all parties. No documentation attached, no signed authorization from me, no explanation of why implied family consent overrides a beneficiary's legal rights. Just words, and not enough of them. Nathan's assessment was 3 sentences. The response lacks any substantive defense. There's no evidence of authorization. They're stalling because they don't have a case. Day 14 came and went, with no settlement offer, no real counter-argument, no acknowledgement of the forged signatures, nothing. Nathan filed a motion for an expedited hearing, citing the forensic evidence, the sworn declaration, and the pattern of retaliation. The probate court granted it. Hearing date: 3 weeks out, a Tuesday in November. On day 15, Gerald called me one last time. His voice had changed again. Gone was the threat from the email. Gone was the patriarch bark. What was left sounded hollowed out. "Stella, please, can we just talk? I'm your father. We can work this out. Don't humiliate me in court." I let the word land. Humiliate. As if humiliation was something being done to him, and not something he'd done to a 5-year-old standing in a driveway with a stuffed bear. "You had 14 days to work this out, Dad. You chose not to. I'll see you at the hearing." I hung up. Nathan called 20 minutes later. "One more thing. Megan's birthday party is this Saturday, and the process server confirmed. The hearing summons needs to be personally served on Gerald, at his residence, by a sheriff's deputy. Saturday. The birthday party. 30 guests. It's the only confirmed time he'll be home, Nathan said. The court requires personal service. I didn't plan it this way, but I didn't stop it either. I wasn't there. I want to be clear about that. I was at Rachel's apartment with Lily that Saturday afternoon, making butterfly sandwiches and watching her teach Grandma Edith how to draw a proper unicorn. I didn't stand on the sidewalk watching. I didn't drive past. I didn't need to. Rachel's cousin knew someone who was at the party, and in a town like Caldwell, a sheriff's deputy pulling up to a birthday barbecue doesn't stay a secret for long. Here is what I was told. It was 2:15 p.m. The backyard was decorated with pink and gold balloons. 30 guests. Megan had just blown out her candles. Diane was carrying a sheet cake through the living room when the doorbell rang. Gerald answered it, still holding a paper plate, expecting a late arrival. A Caldwell County Sheriff's deputy stood on the porch. Tan uniform, clipboard. Gerald Whitmore? Yes. You've been served. He handed Gerald a large envelope. Gerald took it automatically, the way you take something from a stranger before your brain catches up. The deputy tipped his hat, turned, and walked back to his cruiser. Gerald stood in the doorway. Diane came up behind him, cake still in her hands. Who was that? Gerald. Gerald, what is... He opened the envelope. Probate court hearing summons, full petition packet, forensic report summary, and attached to the back, 6 pages in a clear, firm voice. Grandma Edith's sworn declaration. Diane saw the name. Edith Prescott. The cake plate tilted. She grabbed the doorframe. She's still... 30 people were watching, in the backyard, through the sliding glass door, over half-eaten slices of birthday cake. Nobody was singing anymore. Gerald looked up from the papers. According to Rachel's cousin, his face didn't show anger or surprise. It showed the expression of a man who has just realized that the ground beneath his house was never his to stand on. Probate court, Caldwell County. A Tuesday morning in November. Fluorescent lights. Wood grain laminate. The faint smell of floor polish and old paper. Not the kind of room you'd imagine for a reckoning. But then again, most reckonings don't look the way you expect. I sat at the petitioner's table beside Nathan. I wore my navy scrubs under a gray blazer because I'd come straight from a shift and because I wanted the judge to see exactly who I was, a woman who works for a living. Behind me, Grandma Edith sat in the first row, straight-backed, hands folded, 82 years old and radiating the kind of quiet authority that doesn't need volume. Across the aisle, Gerald in a rumpled suit, Dennis Pratchett flipping nervously through a folder that was visibly thinner than ours, and Diane in the row behind them. No smile today, no sweetie, no pastel cardigan. She looked gray. Nathan presented the case in under 20 minutes. Trust deed, 2004. Sole beneficiary, Stella Marie Prescott. Trustee, Gerald Whitmore. Trust distribution authorization, March 2019. Forged. Quitclaim deed, April 2019. Forged. Dr. Sims's forensic report. Signatures do not match known exemplars. Notary Janet Fry, Diane's colleague, notarized without the signatory present. Criminal referral filed. Then Grandma Edith took the stand. She didn't tremble. She didn't ramble. She spoke the way she'd always spoken to me, clearly, gently, and with absolutely no room for misunderstanding. I established the Prescott Family Trust in 2004 for one person, my granddaughter Stella. I never authorized any withdrawal. I never signed any transfer. I was told my granddaughter didn't want me in her life. I have 22 letters, returned in my son-in-law's handwriting, that prove otherwise. Dennis Pratchett attempted to argue implied family authorization. The judge cut him off mid-sentence. Fiduciary duty is not subject to implied consent, counselor. The trustee's obligations are explicit and documented. The judge looked at Gerald the way I've seen doctors look at patients who waited too long. Not angry. Just certain of the diagnosis. The judge issued the ruling from the bench that same afternoon. Expedited, he said, because the evidence left no ambiguity. I sat still and listened to a man in a black robe dismantle the architecture of a lie that had taken my father 22 years to build. First, Gerald A. Whitmore was immediately removed as trustee of the Prescott Family Trust. The court appointed an independent fiduciary, a licensed professional trustee with no connection to either party. Second, restitution. Gerald and Diane Whitmore were ordered to repay $210,000 in misappropriated trust principal, plus $38,000 in accrued interest, for a total of $248,000. Payment due within 90 days. Failure to comply would result in a court-ordered lien on their real property, meaning their house. Third, the 2019 quitclaim deed transferring 412 Birchwood Street was declared void. Since the property had already been sold and the proceeds used as a down payment on the Whitmore's current residence, equity tracing applied. In plain terms, if they couldn't produce $248,000 in 90 days, they'd have to sell the house or face forced sale through the lien. Fourth, the criminal referral to the district attorney was sustained. Gerald faced felony forgery charges under California Penal Code 470. Janet Fry, the notary, had already been summoned separately. Her notary commission revoked, a misdemeanor charge pending. Gerald didn't move when the judge finished. He sat in his chair with his hands flat on the table like a man trying to keep the room from spinning. Diane made a sound behind him. Not a word, just a sound, like air leaving a tire. Outside the courtroom, Grandma Edith took my hand. Her grip was small and firm and warm. Your mama would be proud, baby girl. $248,000. Not revenge, restitution. There's a difference. Revenge is about making someone hurt. Restitution is about getting back what's yours. 1 week after the ruling, Gerald called. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, the last remaining thread of the girl who used to ride in Grandma Edith's green Buick, picked up. He didn't sound like my father. He sounded like a man who'd been sitting in the same chair for 7 days, going over the math and watching it come out wrong every time. Stella, we have to sell the house. I said nothing. She's not coping. She won't eat. Megan's looking for apartments, but she's never paid rent in her life, and she doesn't... His voice cracked. She doesn't know how. I waited. Can you talk to the judge? Reduce the amount? For the kids' sake? Megan's kids? They're just children. They didn't... You told me there was no space for my child. I said it evenly, the way I deliver news in the ER. Clear, calm, no editorializing. In a house you bought with money meant for her. You forged my name. You lied to my grandmother for 22 years. You cut me off from the only person on my mother's side who wanted me, and now you're asking me to fix this for you. Silence. Long. Heavy with the sound of someone who has run out of narrative. I won't make your life harder than the court already has, Dad. But I won't make it easier either. The trust will be repaid. That's not negotiable. One more beat of silence. Then, goodbye, Dad. I set the phone on the kitchen counter. I didn't slam it. I didn't cry. I just set it down the way you set down something you've been carrying too long and finally realize you're allowed to put down. That evening, Diane's Facebook went dark. Every post deleted. Megan's family dinner photos, gone. The group chat that had buzzed with prayer hands and accusations fell silent, one by one, like lights going off in a house nobody could afford anymore. I didn't watch. I didn't check. I was done looking in that direction. 4 months later, the trust was repaid in full. Every dollar, every cent of interest. Gerald and Diane sold the house in 63 days, at a loss. I didn't ask where they went. I didn't need to know. With the trust restored and an independent trustee managing it properly for the first time, I put a down payment on a 2-bedroom cottage on Maplewood Lane, half a mile from the hospital, 3 blocks from Lily's new school. It had a small yard, a kitchen with actual counter space, and a front door that I painted red on the first Saturday we moved in. Lily stood in the driveway and pointed at it like she'd conjured it out of a crayon. "Mama, it's the door, from my drawing." "You designed it, baby. I just made it real." Grandma Edith moved back to California that winter. She rented a one-bedroom apartment 10 minutes from us, close enough to walk when the weather was good, and it was good most days. Every Saturday morning, she and Lily baked cornbread in my kitchen. The house smelled like butter and warmth, and Lily learned to crack eggs without getting shell in the batter, and Grandma Edith hummed the same hymns she used to sing to me on Birchwood Street. We planted lavender along the front walk. Lily watered it every evening with a pink watering can, Biscuit wedged under her arm, talking to each plant like it was a friend she was catching up with. I started seeing a therapist. Not because I was broken, but because 22 years of carrying someone else's lies had left grooves in the way I thought about myself, and I wanted to smooth them out. I wanted to be the kind of steady that was real, not performed. In Lily's room, taped to the wall above her bed, was the original drawing. Our house, red door, 2 hearts on the roof. Next to it, a new one. Our real house, same red door. But now there were 3 people in front of it, me, Lily, and a small white-haired figure labeled in careful kindergarten letters, Great Grandma. The star nightlight still glowed by her pillow. Biscuit still sat on the bed. Some things you don't outgrow. You just finally give them the right home. I'm sitting on my front porch as I tell you this. It's a Sunday morning. The coffee's hot, the lavender's blooming, and through the kitchen window I can hear Lily giggling at something Grandma Edith said over cornbread batter. The kind of sound that fills a house the way sunlight fills a room, without trying, without asking permission, just because it belongs there. My father's criminal case is still making its way through the system. I don't follow it closely. Nathan sends updates when there's something I need to know. The forgery charge stands. Janet Fry's notary commission is permanently revoked. These are consequences, not punishments I designed. They're the natural weight of choices Gerald and Diane made long before I ever opened that box. Some of the relatives who sent me those prayer hands texts have reached out since. A few apologized. Most haven't. I'm okay with that. I didn't do this for their approval. I did it because my daughter asked me if she was too big, and the answer to that question couldn't stay inside a notes app forever. Gerald hasn't called again. Neither has Diane. Neither has Megan. The silence where their voices used to be doesn't feel empty. It feels like a room that's been cleared of furniture that was never mine, and now there's space to breathe. Lily asked me last week why our front door is red. I told her because she drew it that way, a long time ago, in a house that wasn't ours yet. She nodded like this made perfect sense. I knew it would come true, she said. 5-year-olds understand faith better than most adults. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because my daughter deserved to know that when someone tells you there's no space for you, the answer isn't to make yourself smaller. It's to find out who's been taking up your space all along. And if you're out there, if your family ever made you feel like you were too much, you weren't. You were just in a house that was too small for the truth. I used to be afraid of silence in our apartment. Now, the silence in our house sounds different. It sounds like peace. It sounds like enough. That's my story. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. It means more than you know. If any part of this reached you, if you've ever had to build your own table because the one you were born into didn't have room for you, leave a comment. Tell me your story. I read every single one, and you are not alone in this. If you want to hear another story about a mother who refused to stay silent, check the link in the description. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and the people who actually deserve a seat at your table.